Hey everybody, welcome back to PST Live. My name of course is Alan Scaife. I know you guys had class with Melanie yesterday. And of course our topic for this week is superlative stories. So I know that you guys have been going over the superlative form of a lot of different adjectives. And along with that, probably also comparatives as well, right? So that is what we are going to start with in our first class today. We're going to be doing some grammar. So I would like you guys to take a look at the comparatives, right? What am I talking about? I'm combining two words, right? I want you guys to take a look at the comparatives and superlatives practice, right? And we've got a lot of stuff to do here. If you take a look at exercise B, there's a lot of vocabulary and they want to know the comparative and superlative form of that adjective. So it's a lot of work, right? Now before we get on to that, just 1 second, I just have to find something. I'm almost done, but how are you guys doing today? Is anybody wanting to make a comment? Angela, are you out there maybe? Or Dennis? Dennis, who is Dennis? But anyhow, for me, I'm doing okay today. Not much to tell you. What did I do last night? Last night I made some spaghetti and it was pretty good. It was better than the spaghetti I made 2 weeks ago. That spaghetti was good, but last night's spaghetti was better. However, the spaghetti that my wife makes is the best, right? So of course you guys know good, the comparative form is better, and the superlative form is best, right? So anyhow, I'm just going to take a look at that sheet for a second. Okay, so we're looking at grammar. And okay, I think guys, probably the best idea, what we should do first is just start with a quick review of comparatives and superlatives, right? So I think you guys also have this on your sheet at home. Please take a look. I believe it's on the back side or on the second page. And it says, of course, that adjectives are used to describe nouns. Now, I know, oh, hi Angela, good to see you too. I know you guys already know what adjectives are, right? We use them to describe nouns, to describe a place, a person, or a thing, right? So of course, if we're describing a person, how would you describe me? What would be a good adjective to describe me? Anybody? Does anybody have an adjective out there you could use to describe me? Actually, that's kind of scary. I shouldn't be asking you to describe me. Okay, let me think of an example here. Okay, now my wife is a very nice person, of course, and there's an adjective. She's a nice person. However, sometimes my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, describes me as fat, right? So we all know the meaning of fat. Okay, so there's fat, right? Now, what is the comparative form of fat? Let's think about that. Comparative. And also, what is the superlative form of fat? Okay, so I want you guys to think. Now, fat here is not ending with a Y, right? Also, fat, it's one syllable, right? So when we convert the adjective fat into the comparative form here, how do we make it? Does anybody know? Angela, do you have an idea? How do we spell the comparative form of fat? I'll give you guys a moment. So my mother-in-law, she might say, Alan, you're fat. But that guy is what? What is the comparative form? Okay, all right, no answer yet, that's fine. So the comparative form of fat is fatter, right? So we're adding a consonant an additional T, and we're also adding that ER as well, right? So let's say, again, my mother-in-law says, Alan, you're fat, but that guy is fatter. But that guy over there, he is the, what is the superlative form of fat? So we got fat, fatter, and you guys probably already know, oftentimes when we're talking about an adjective that just has one syllable and ends with a consonant, when we turn it into the superlative form, we add EST. Well, we also add that extra consonant, right? So it is fattest, right? So that person is fat, but he is fatter, and he is the fattest. Now, I don't know why I started with fat, but anyhow. And before that, there are lots of irregular adjectives that I just talked about. Okay, awesome. Yes, Angela, you're right. You're right on the money. You nailed it. You got it. Okay, good. But you guys know if we have an adjective and it says only one syllable ending in E. So for example, wide, fine, or cute, we simply add an R, right? So we can think of lots of other words like this, but let's take a look at cute. So cute. What is cute? Oof. I'm trying to think. What is cute? Kittens are cute, right? But well, what's more cute than a kitten? Maybe puppies, right? So kittens are cute, but puppies are what? So what is the comparative form of cute here, right? Now, we just read over the rule. It's pretty simple. We just add an R, right? Cute, cuter, right? Cute, cuter. And what would be the superlative form? So kittens are cute, puppies are cuter. Oh my God, what's cuter than puppies? Ooh, that's hard, right? Okay, let's say rabbits. Rabbits are extremely cute, right? So rabbits are the cutest, right? Why did I pick the adjective cute to talk about? That's kind of a weird one for me. Okay, anyhow guys, we'll take a look further down the list. Now remember, if we only have one syllable with one vowel and one consonant at the end, all we do is add ER. So fat here is a good example of that, right? Fat, fatter, fattest, right? Okay, let's take a look at another one. Only one syllable with more than one vowel or more than one consonant at the end. So words like light, neat, or fast. Now again, we just add an ER and then we add an EST for the superlative form. So let's think about neat, right? So let's say we got neat. Neat becomes what in the comparative form? How do we spell it? Angela, do you have an idea? Neat becomes what? I'll give you guys a moment. Angela or anybody. Okay, this is not looking so straight. Okay, but not too bad. So Angela, any idea for the comparative form? Neat and neat. Neater. Okay, so let's say, thinking of an example here. My room is neat, but my older brother's room is neater. However, my younger sister's room, out of the three of us, it is the neatest, right? So again, pretty easy stuff. So one thing you'll notice though about the adjectives we've looked at so far is that of course they're just one syllable, one sound, right? Fat, cute, neat, right? Of course, when we change them into the comparative form, then they have the ER, and that makes them two syllables, of course, fatter, cuter, neater. Or when we convert them into the superlative form, they also have two syllables, right? Fattest, cutest, neatest. However, if we have a word that has more than one syllable, and it's not ending with Y, then things are pretty different, right? So if we think of course, the adjective interesting, interesting, right? Interesting, interesting, right? We have 4 syllables, not 1 syllable. In this case, the rule changes. Of course, we're not just going to add an ER. We're not going to say interesting-er, right? That doesn't sound terrible, but actually it just doesn't work. Now the rule in this case, pretty simple actually. We just have to add more. So the comparative form of interesting here is more interesting. So let's say if I was talking to a good friend of mine from a different country who has never traveled to Canada, and he asked me, Alan, what are some interesting cities to travel to in Canada? I might say, for example, well, Toronto is an interesting city, but Vancouver is more interesting. However, now, when we're talking about the superlative form, we're not going to say like more interesting. That would be an interesting guess, actually. But instead, we have to use most, right? So we say the most interesting. So I might tell my friend, Toronto is an interesting city, but Vancouver is more interesting. And city starting with M, Montreal. Montreal is the most interesting, right? Okay, so just remember, when we have an adjective that has more than 1 syllable, multiple syllables, we need to add more for the comparative form, and then we need to add most for the superlative form. Now, there is one type of adjective I have skipped so far, and that is adjectives that end in Y. So things like happy or silly or lonely, right? So lonely is kind of an interesting one, right? Let's take a look at the adjective lonely. Now, first off, we all know what the meaning of lonely is, right? Now, actually, maybe many people these days are pretty lonely. I'm sure a lot of international students living in Canada right now, I'm sure unfortunately a lot of you guys are kind of lonely because you're stuck at home, you're not supposed to go out. It's kind of a lonely time, right? It is a lonely time for many Canadians as well, right? Now here, lonely, we actually do have 2 syllables, right? But this one here is ending with a Y. Now the rule is, for the comparative form, we must remove the Y and we have to replace it with an I and also an ER, right? So you add IER. Sorry, that's a plus. That is not a T. So for the comparative form, we have, oops, that looks kind of weird, lonelier. Lonelier. Yeah, so sad. He is lonelier. And lastly, for the superlative form, how do we spell the superlative form of lonely? Lonely becomes lonelier, and of course it becomes the loneliest, right? Loneliest. And of course we can't forget our I, right? He is the loneliest. She is the loneliest, right? Vancouver is a lonely city. Actually, I don't know if that's true, but anyhow, lonely, lonelier, and loneliest. Now, something else you need to keep in mind here, though, is with the superlative form. When you are talking about it, right? You say, he is fat, but that guy is fatter. And lastly, but that guy is the fattest. So remember, when you're talking about the superlative, you always need to add the before you say it, right? He is the fattest. She is the cutest. That room is the neatest. Montreal is the most interesting city in Canada. And Brian is the loneliest, right? I don't know who Brian is, but he's an extremely lonely guy, right? Anyhow, guys, I just wanted to do that as a quick review because I know when we move on to the next page, I want to move on to B. We have a massive list of vocabulary and they want us to look at the comparative and superlative form of all of these words. So I want you guys get started. You've got two examples, right? Take a look at cheap, cheaper, cheapest, and you also have beautiful, beautiful, right? 3 syllables. More beautiful and the most beautiful. And then after that we have pretty, right? So I want you guys to think, pretty. What is the comparative form and what is the superlative form? Give me a second, I'm just going to erase the board here. Now actually I can leave this stuff here, but I'll erase this one. Okay. Okay, looks a bit messy, but okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, guys, so you had a little bit of time to think about the adjective pretty, right? Flowers are pretty, aren't they? At least my daughter thinks flowers are pretty. Okay, but what is the comparative form? Now, we've got an adjective that ends in Y, so we know we have to remove that Y, right? We got to cut it out, you know, kick that Y out. Why are you here, Y? You're garbage, right? Kick the Y out, and then you got to replace it with I-E-R, right? So it becomes prettier. So pretty, prettier, and of course our superlative form, kind of following the same idea here. We got to replace that Y with an I, and then add the EST, right? So pretty, prettier, and the prettiest, right? Ooh, I can't think of good examples for that. Flowers are pretty, but diamonds are prettier. Ooh, what's prettier than diamonds? I don't know. My daughter is the prettiest. Ooh, oh, too much, right? Okay, anyhow, so we got pretty, guys. Let's move on to easy. Again, we've got an adjective ending in Y. You know, let's say when I was in school for school subjects, I thought history class was easy. However, after that, I thought that math class was actually easier than history class. So again, because we got a Y, following the same idea here, easier. And of course, after that, I thought music class was the easiest, right? So easiest. Okay, now actually I shouldn't give you guys so many examples, otherwise we're gonna move too slowly here, right? Okay, big, nice and easy. Big's too easy, I'm not gonna write it down. Big, bigger, biggest, right? B-I-G-G-E-R for the comparative form, and B-I-G-G-E-S-T for the superlative form. All right, good. Light. Again, light, one syllable. Light, right? So light, lighter, lightest. And then heavy. We got another Y at the end. So again, you got to remove that Y. Kick that Y out, right? Why are you here, Mr. Y? Get out of here. So we got heavy, heavier, and heaviest, right? I-E-S-T. Okay, fast. Super easy one. Fast, faster, fastest. Reliable. Now this one we're going to take a look at because this one is not one syllable. We've got multiple syllables here. Reliable. Now, reliable, good adjective. I hope you guys know the meaning of reliable. If something or somebody is reliable, it means you can depend on them, you can count on them, you can rely on them. Maybe this thing, it has lasted for a long time. It doesn't break easy, right? It's a reliable product, of course, right? So many people tell me that, for example, Tesla cars are very reliable. They don't break down easily. They can survive for a long time. Or maybe there's somebody in your life, maybe your husband, your wife, your mom, your dad, your grandpa, your sister, etc., that is very reliable, right? They always help you out. So that's the meaning of reliable, really good adjective. A synonym for reliable would be dependable, right? Dependable. Anyhow, we're looking at reliable. What is the comparative form of reliable? Now, reliable, 4 syllables, right? So what we got to do here again is we're not going to be adding just ER, right? And we're not going to be adding IER. Instead, we need to use more. More reliable. Okay, and lastly, what is our rule when we have a superlative and there's an adjective with more than 1 syllable? Of course, we need to add most, right? The most reliable. Okay, good. All right, guys, but continuing on downwards in this list, slow, nice and easy. Slow, slower, just add the ER. Slowest, add the EST. New, newer, newest, easy. Dry, of course we got a Y, we got to replace it with the IER, right? Dry, drier, driest. Happy, again, happy, happier, happiest, right? Old, older, oldest. Nice, nicer, nicest. Compact. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Let's look at compact. Compact, that is an interesting adjective. What does that mean? Compact. So we got 2 syllables, right? Now, you'll know because it has 2 syllables that we're not just going to be adding ER or IER, right? So of course we need to say more compact. And lastly, the most compact. Compact is an interesting adjective, not so commonly used, but the meaning of it is if something is compact, it's usually we would use this when we're referring to a certain item, right? A compact item, well, a very similar synonym anyhow would be like small or easy to make it small, right? So maybe you have something that folds up. So for example, I have a baby stroller. It's quite big, however, it's still compact because you can kind of break it down, put it together, and make it much smaller so that you can put it into your car or put it somewhere else in your closet, for example. So it's although it's a little bit large, it's actually compact. So if something is compact, it can be manipulated or folded or put into a certain shape that will make it much smaller, right? So that is the meaning of compact. Okay. Anyhow, after that, we've got a really excellent adjective. We've got tasty, tasty. Now, tasty is actually 2 syllables, right? But this one does not follow this rule here. With tasty, we're actually gonna take out the Y and replace it with IER. So tasty, tastier, and the tastiest, right? Canadian food is tasty. Maybe. Depends on what you think is tasty, I suppose, right? However, Italian food, I'd have to say, is tastier, right? Pizza, lasagna, pasta, mamma mia, it's delicious, right? But in my opinion, okay, well, I don't want to pick Japanese, Korean, or Brazilian food because I don't want to cause any trouble. So I got to think of some different cuisine. Canadian food is tasty. Italian food is tastier. But I would have to say French food is the tastiest, right? Yum, yum. Okay, after tasty, we've got bitter. Now just remember bitter, the meaning of that is basically the opposite of sweet, right? So bitter flavor or bitter taste, right? What is bitter? Sometimes tea without sugar can be very, very bitter, right? So bitter becomes what? Bitter. Now, of course, we're not going to say bitterer or bitterest, right? We're going to say it's more bitter, and it is the most bitter, right? So bitter, though, can also be used to describe somebody's personality, right? A bitter person, of course, is somebody who is not sweet, basically. They're not very nice. A bitter person is usually used to describe someone who is always upset, right? They're always kind of angry or disappointed or upset about something, right? So maybe they recently lost a soccer game, right? After the game, they might be bitter, right? So that guy's bitter. But that guy is even more bitter. And that guy way over there, he is the most bitter guy I can see. Okay. So yeah, used for describing food, basically opposite of sweet, but also used to describe somebody's personality as well. Okay, after that, guys, we've got advanced. So advanced. Now advanced, of course, more advanced, most advanced. And then suitable. That's a good one. Suitable. Suitable, more suitable, the most suitable. And lastly on our list here, we've got warm. Pretty good one. Last month it was warm, but now it's warmer. And I think next month it will be the warmest out of the 3 months there, right? So warm, warmer, and the warmest, right? Okay, good. So we went through our list of adjectives there. Those adjectives are all quite good, and it's always good to know the comparative and superlative form. So guys, let's move on to exercise C. I'm gonna give you guys some time to do this, but just a couple of seconds and then I will present you with the correct answer. But before I do that, I think I gotta erase the list here. So give me a second. Your first one here in C says complete the questions and answers with comparatives and superlatives. So in number 1 here, we've got what is the blank place you've ever been to? So now in the brackets or parentheses, we've already been given our adjective for these blanks here. We're looking to use the adjective interesting, right? But we have to use that adjective interesting in different forms. So thinking about number 1, we've got 3 different blanks here. So I'm going to write 1, but then I'm going to write 1 again, 2, and 3, because we got 3 different blanks. Okay, so what do you think person A is asking? What is the interesting place you've been to? We know it's interesting, right? Now, most likely, they're not going to be using the comparative form because it doesn't really make sense, right? What is the more interesting place you've been to? That doesn't really make sense. When people ask this kind of question, what is the something you have eaten or person you have met? With interesting, they're going to ask using the superlative form. So we're going to say here, what is the most interesting place you have been to, right? And that's a good question. Okay, now in B here, we've got blank I've ever been to is someplace. Oh, okay, so we can give our own answer basically. So again, he's going to be responding by answering that question. So he's going to say the, and of course we got to make it a capital because it's starting at the beginning of the sentence. The most interesting place I've ever been to is blank. Now, this part here, we're not using interesting to answer this part, right? This is kind of your own personal preference, right? Because maybe you could just imagine this person is asking you that question. What is the most interesting place you've ever been to? Oh, the most interesting place I've ever been to is... So the answer here is really up to you guys. You just have to think of a place that was very, very interesting for you. Where is the most interesting place you have ever been to? For me, I'd have to say the most interesting place I've ever been to is... I'm going to write here Prague in the Czech Republic. Blech. And whoops, I'm spelling that wrong. Okay. Republic. Yikes. Okay, so my personal answer would be Prague in the Czech Republic. So a lot of you guys out there might know Prague as Praha. In the Czech Republic, you might know Czech Republic as Czechia. So if you do travel to Europe, highly recommend Prague. Great place in the Czech Republic. Lot cheaper than other Western European countries, and the beer is the best in Europe, in my opinion. Okay guys, let's take a look at number 2. Number 2 here. how many blanks? Again, we have this broken into 3 blanks, right? Bada bing, bada boom, and bam. Okay. So we're starting with which. Which is blank, the Sahara Desert or the Gobi Desert? So Sahara in Northern Africa and the Gobi in China, right? So they're comparing 2 different deserts, right? So because they're comparing these 2, we know we should be using the comparative form of this adjective, right? So, sorry guys, this is not number 2. This is number 3. How did I skip number 2? Anyhow, we're gonna do number 3 first. So sorry if you're confused right now. Take a look at number 3. So again, which is blank, the Sahara Desert or the Gobi Desert? And the adjective we're using here is large. But like I just said, we're comparing those 2 deserts, not desserts, right? Dessert is delicious. Desert, you can't eat it. It tastes like sand. It's disgusting, right? Bad joke. Anyhow, so because we're comparing the 2, we got to use the comparative form of large. That's our adjective. So what we're going to fill in the blank here with is which is, how do we convert large into the comparative form? We simply add ER, right? So which is larger? The Sahara Desert or the Gobi Desert? The blank is blank. Okay, now actually we'd have to do research for this. I'm pretty sure though the answer is fairly obvious. I'm pretty sure like the Sahara Desert is the biggest desert in the world. Could be wrong. But I think if we're comparing Sahara and Gobi, I'm pretty sure the Sahara Desert is bigger. So our answer for number 2, we want to say the, and then our answer, so the Sahara, not Sarah. The Sahara Desert is what? Again, we're still using the comparative form. The Sahara Desert is larger. Now, you could just leave it at that, right? You don't have to add more, but if you wanted to, you could say the Sahara Desert is larger than the Gobi Desert. That's not necessary though, right? Anyhow guys, sorry, let's go back to number 2. Number 2 here, what is blank building you've ever been in? And we have the adjective tall, right? So let's think about that there. That's pretty simple though. So again, because we got what is the something building you've ever been into or been in, we're going to be using the superlative form here because we're not comparing 2 things, right? So what is the tallest building you've ever been in? And again, with the answer here, the person's going to be answering that question directly, so they're going to say the tallest. So they say the tallest building. Ooh, can't forget that. The tallest building I've ever been in is, and then we have a blank. So this is really up to you guys, right? You might want to think of your own personal answer here. What is the tallest building you've ever been in? For me, it would be the CN Tower. So the CN Tower is a really big tower in Canada, actually in Toronto. So yeah, for me, the CN Tower is the tallest building I've ever been in. Okay guys, now of course we have many more questions here. I just wanted to give you an example of some of these. I hope you guys have continued to fill these in at home. What I would like to do is to briefly go over these orally because I don't want this to suck up too much time. So let's take a look at number 4 together. Okay, now we've got our adjective famous and we got who is blank, Lady Gaga or Madonna. Now we're comparing 2 people, Lady Gaga, and we're comparing her to Madonna, right? And then we got our adjective famous. So because we're comparing them, we got to use the comparative form of the adjective famous. Now, famous, two syllables, right? So in this case, we want to say who is more famous, right? Not famouser. Who is more famous, Lady Gaga or Madonna? I really don't know what the answer is, but I would say right now, currently in the world, probably Lady Gaga. So my answer would be Lady Gaga is more famous than Madonna. Lady Gaga is more famous than Madonna. Okay, good. Take a look at number 5. Which country has a blank population? China or India? And we've got our adjective large, right? Now, again, comparing two things, so we would need the comparative form. Which country has a larger? Which country has a larger population? China or India? Now, both countries have a large population, but I know that China has the largest population in the world. So my answer here would be China has the larger population, or China has a larger population. You could also say China has the largest population in the world. Okay, number 6, guys, we've got our adjective here as strong. It says, which fruit has a blank smell? Bananas or a durian, right? I think it should just say or durians. That's a mistake, actually. Yeah, if you guys look at your paper, it says or a durians, but you don't use an article a with a plural form of the noun. So actually take out the a. It should just be bananas or durians. Anyhow, again, comparing two different things, right? We're comparing these fruits, so we need the comparative form. And we got strong, one syllable. Just add er. So which number 6, which fruit has a stronger smell? Bananas or durians? Now, I've never smelled durian before, but I've heard it's pretty bad. A lot of people would say bananas don't have a bad smell. I actually think they do. I don't like the smell of bananas. But anyhow, that's just me. So guys, B, what are we going to say here? I'm going to say durians, right? Durians have a stronger smell. That would be my answer. Durians have a stronger smell. Okay, good. Number 7, we got what is blank problem in the world today? And we've got big. Now, this one here, we want to use the superlative form, right? So we're going to say what is the biggest problem in the world today? Because we're not comparing two things. We're just looking for one single thing, and that thing is the biggest. What is the biggest problem in the world today? Ooh, that's a pretty hard one. Well, no, that's not pretty hard. Obviously, it's coronavirus. So my answer here would be the coronavirus is the biggest problem in the world today. The coronavirus is the biggest problem in the world today. And boom, we got our answer. So let's move on to our last one here, guys. Number 8, which is blank, Mount Everest or K2? Now, I know both of those mountains are huge, but I think we all know out there that Everest is pretty widely known as the biggest mountain in the whole world. But we're comparing these two, right? We're comparing the K2 mountain to Everest. So we need the comparative form. So we want to say, which is higher, Mount Everest or K2? Now, I would answer Mount Everest. I say Mount Everest is higher, period, or Mount Everest is higher than K2. All right, guys, so we're done with C. Take a look on the next page. We've got exercise D here. And exercise D, this would be pretty good homework, but I think we'll do this together. Yeah, let's do this together because actually exercise E as well, we're not going to really be able to do exercise E. So I think we'll do exercise D together. And we've only got a few here, right? And all these ones here, it's about preferences. Which one do you prefer? Explain your answers using comparative sentences. So we're just going to be focusing on comparatives. And it says, which house would you choose and why? Okay, now we've got two houses here, right? And you want to say which one you would choose first. So I would choose blank, but then you also need to give some reasons, right? So maybe you say, I would choose this because it is bigger, smaller, cheaper, more expensive, whatever the reason is. But you need to use comparative. So just gonna erase the board here. Maybe you guys can think of some answers at home. Take a look at those two houses in A. And I'm just gonna give you guys some examples. All right, so two houses, A and B. Now, like I said before, because we're talking about preference, when we start this here, oops, I grabbed the wrong marker, one moment. When we start D here, okay, I'm gonna say, I would choose option B. Okay, now a lot of you guys probably thought, oh, what? I thought you were gonna choose option A because that place is nicer, right? Now, but I'm gonna go with B. And I'm gonna explain why using comparatives. I would choose option B because it, of course, option B is cheaper than option A. So of course, yeah, it is cheaper. So there's one use of a comparative because option A costs $300,000. But option B is a lot cheaper. It's $75,000, right? It's basically less than 1/3 of the price of option A. So wow, what a great deal. Now, I could expand on this a little bit more. I could say option A is nicer, right? Of course, that house is nicer. But option B, what else could I say about option B? Option B is, here's a good one. Cozier. All right, guys, so I just wanted to use two more comparatives, right? So I am saying option A is nicer. That's true, right? Option A, that house is nicer than option B. It is nicer, but option B is cozier, right? And you're probably thinking, cozier, what does that mean? So cozier comes from the verb cozy, right? Now that verb, or that adjective, sorry, not verb, what am I talking about? This adjective here, a lot of you guys might not be familiar with it, but if something is cozy, it's kind of hard to describe, but if something is cozy, it means that it's kind of small and comfortable, right? Like a cozy blanket, right? Or a cozy sofa, right? You just feel like, so nice, right? So of course, because option B is smaller, I also think it looks kind of nice as well. I think it looks cozier. Anyhow, so that's my answer for that one. But let's move on to describing the two cars and talking about our preference here. So again, we're gonna start with I would choose option something. Now, I gotta actually think about this. Okay, so we got two cars. Both of them are nice. One is nicer than the other. Obviously, option A is faster. It's also more expensive. Option B, maybe cozier. It's cheaper, so that's a big plus. And if I drive around with my family, that just kind of looks more normal than driving around with the car in A, right? I think the option A car would be really cool if I were younger and not married and didn't have a kid. So unfortunately, I'm gonna go with the boring choice here. I'm gonna go with B again. Jeez. Anyhow, I would choose option B, and I wanna give a reason right away. Because, now I don't wanna say because it's cheaper right away. Because, ooh, what else can I say? Because now also, I could imagine that the sports car, or this really nice car in A, probably uses a lot more gas, right? The option B, probably not as much, right? So I would choose option B because it uses, actually, I'll give you guys a really tough term. Because it is more fuel efficient. Okay, so my adjective here is efficient. If something is efficient, it works really well. And this one is fuel efficient. So fuel, of course I mean gas or oil, right? If something is fuel efficient, it basically means it uses less oil or gas, right? Anyhow, so I'm guessing option B is more fuel efficient. Now I want to say something, again, I'm going to say something nice about option A, but I'm going to use but again and then say something else good about option B one more time. So I'm going to write here, option A is, now option A, like I said before, it's more expensive, it's probably faster, that's pretty obvious here, right? But I'm going to use a different adjective. I'm going to use the adjective flashy, flashy. Now flashy ends with a Y, so when we turn it into the comparative form, we're going to add IER. It is flashier, right? It's flashier. Now, what does flashy mean though? Ooh. Now, flashy means like it's kind of like shiny. It's shining, right? It's attractive. It looks cool. If we say something is flashy, it's like, wow, it looks like kind of shiny and cool, right? Sometimes it can have a negative meaning, right? Like that guy's flashing his money around, he's too flashy. But anyhow, option A is flashier, but option B is, and I'm gonna write something with a B here, for a family. Now, this is a comparative adjective, or an adjective in the comparative form. We have talked about this one before, but of course option A for me would be good, but actually option B would be better, right? Because it's cheaper, it's more fuel efficient, and I think it's just better for a family. Okay guys, good, good, good. Now, we only got a couple of minutes left here, and the last one here, we're taking a look at two different watches, right? Okay, option A cost $400, option B cost 75 bucks. Now, for me, I'm just gonna give you guys an oral example because I already wrote these two down and we're running out of time here, right? So for me, this is the only one where I would go for the more expensive one. I would choose option A because it looks more dependable, looks more reliable. I think it will last for a longer period of time, right? Now, I could say here, on the other hand, option B is also nice looking or is cheaper, but option A is, option A is nicer looking, right? It's just a nicer looking watch than option B. So that would be my answer. Okay guys, now you will notice on the next page here, there is another activity, right, in E. And it says here, in pairs, use the prompts to write a conversation using comparatives and superlatives. Two friends are at the shopping mall. One friend is looking to buy a new phone. So you have the beginning of this conversation here, and you guys can kind of continue it. So what I recommend is if you have extra time later on tonight, it would be a good idea to go over these here, add your own sentences, and if there's somebody at home studying with you, or you can maybe force your partner to study with you, it'd be good to work with them. But we're going to take a break, and after the break, guys, we're going to get into some idioms. And we're going to go over some of them on the sheet here, and also talk about describing jobs. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. Okay guys, welcome back. So for the next portion here, we're gonna start by going over some useful idioms. I just wanna pick out 10 idioms from this list here that I think are good. However, honestly speaking, most of these idioms are quite good. So I think if you have extra time, it would be a good idea to look over all of these idioms, try to understand the meaning, and think about how you could create some example sentences. But let's take a look at least 10 of these together, right? So the first one I want to take a look at, because I use this one pretty often, is an arm and a leg, right? Now, if we say something costs an arm and a leg, so we always talk about this when we're talking about the price of something, we're saying that it's just very expensive or costly. Like it says here, it costs a large amount of money. So kind of the meaning here is that this item or this product is so expensive that you should cut off your arm and cut off your leg and use that as payment because it's so pricey, right? So just the way you want to use it though is it costs an arm and a leg. So I'm just going to write down example and write down an example sentence, right? So you could say it, or whatever it is, costs an arm and a leg. So there's our expression, right? But you also want to use costs, right? And it costs an arm and a leg. Now, think about life in Vancouver, or think about life back in Brazil, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, etc. How about for you guys? What costs an arm and a leg in your country, right? So let me form that question. What costs an arm and a leg in your country? Okay, now I know I'm going over here and that's not so good, but what costs an arm and a leg in your country? Now, of course, I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and it's a pretty expensive place living in Vancouver. But one of the most expensive thing in Vancouver is rent, right? It's very expensive to rent an apartment or a house, or actually the cost of a house is really, really, really high. So in Vancouver, I'm just going to write rent though. I'm going to write rent costs an arm and a leg in Vancouver, Canada. But I'll just end it at that, right? Now, there are other things I could talk about here in Vancouver that also cost a lot though. Maybe eating out in a restaurant costs an arm and a leg. Or, cars are not so bad, but and electronics not so bad. What else costs an arm and a leg in Vancouver? A lot of tourist attractions in Vancouver are quite expensive. So tourist attractions cost an arm and a leg in Vancouver. But I wonder about in your guys' country, what costs an arm and a leg? Maybe in Japan, you might be thinking, Kobe beef costs an arm and a leg, right? Kobe beef, I think, is very expensive. That's what I heard, right? Or maybe in Korea, what costs an arm and a leg in Korea? Well, I know in Korea too that housing is a pretty big issue as well. So maybe an apartment costs an arm and a leg. Or in Brazil's case, what costs an arm and a leg in Brazil? I heard in Brazil that Apple products are very, very expensive. I'm not talking about like Apple, yum yum Apple, right? I'm talking about Apple electronics, right? So I heard an iPhone costs an arm and a leg in Brazil. Okay, so that is arm and a leg. Kind of a useful one. I actually do use this quite a bit, to cost an arm and a leg. But let's take a look at another one together, guys. So next one I want to take a look at here is, the ball is in your court. The ball is in your court. So this is kind of a basketball related idiom, right? So when you're on a court, of course, that's where you play basketball. If the ball is in your court, What you want to imagine here is that you have the ball. The ball is in your court. And if you say the ball is in your court, what you're saying to this person is that it's up to you to make the next decision or step. It's your decision. I'm not going to make the decision. You're going to make the decision, right? Or you could say the ball is in my court. I need to make a decision. So let's say you and your partner, or I don't know, your roommate are deciding where to go out for dinner tonight, right? But you don't want to decide. You have no idea. You haven't lived in this city for very long. So you say to your roommate or your partner, you say, the ball is in your court. And you're just saying to them, please make a decision. It's your, it's up to you. You have to make this decision, not me. So basically, we just say this in a separate sentence, and we just say, the ball is in your court. The decision is yours, right? You make the decision, not me, right? So the ball is in your court, you decide, right? Or somebody may say to you, the ball is in your court, right? And you're like, oh, the ball is in my court? You want me to decide? Yes, the ball is in your court. Okay, guys, so that's our second one, right? Not too much else I have to explain about it. Again, it's just in a separate sentence by itself. The ball is in your court. Okay, but let's continue onwards here. Next one I want to take a look at is, I think beat around the bush is a good one. This is another one I quite often use. And usually when we use this, we say, stop beating around the bush. Okay, now you guys can see the meaning there, right? It says avoiding the main topic, not speaking directly about the issue, right? So what you kind of want to imagine here, or the image you want to have in your head, is there is a bush, right? Now a bush is, not grass, not a tree, but bushes are a bunch of plants, right? And somebody's beating around the bush. They're hitting the bush, right? But they're not like hitting it directly, right? They're hitting it kind of indirectly around it. So the meaning of this is, if somebody says to you, for example, stop beating around the bush, they're saying to you that you are not addressing the main topic. You are not giving a clear answer. You are being too indirect, right? So let's say, for example, somebody, let's say in your workplace, right? You haven't finished your report and it's due today, and your boss comes up to you. Your boss is like, hey, where's that report? And you're like, well, last night I was working on it, and then I had some trouble with the online site. It wasn't working, and then I had to cook dinner, and so you are, in this case, you are beating around the bush. You're not giving like a straight answer. You're not being direct, right? So in this case, the boss might say, hey, stop beating around the bush. Where is the report? You might say, I'm sorry, I haven't finished it yet. And then your boss says to you, well, come on, you got to finish it ASAP, right? You got to finish it as soon as possible, right? So to beat around the bush. Now, this is also an expression often used when, let's say, you're in a relationship with your partner, and, let's say there's a boyfriend and a girlfriend, right? The girlfriend took the boyfriend shopping, and she puts on a dress, and she says to her boyfriend, does this make me look fat, right? The boyfriend says, well, no, hey, did you hear about that new Italian restaurant? That nice new one? Yeah, it's really good. So then the girlfriend says, come on, stop beating around the bush. Does this make me look fat, yes or no? The boyfriend says, no, you look great. Yeah. All right, anyhow, guys, so to beat around the bush, this is one I quite often use, maybe when I'm having maybe an argument with somebody and I want a direct answer. Maybe it's with a sibling of mine, maybe my younger brother. I say, hey, stop beating around the bush. What do you think about this? Tell me the truth, right? Okay, so that's a good one. And let's keep moving on, though. Another one here. What is a good one? Okay. Don't count your chickens before they've hatched. Now, my copy of this here, guys, has kind of cut off some of the expressions, but I think your copy hasn't, or at least I hope it hasn't. So what I can see here is the explanation here says this idiom is used to express that you should not imagine something is going to happen before you put in some hard work. So don't count your chickens before they have hatched, right? The meaning of this is like, let's say you've got a friend. I think everybody has this kind of friend who imagines that they're doing really, really, really well, right? That they've got this new business plan and they're going to make a lot of money, right? They're like, yeah, I'm going to open up this store and then I'm going to get rich and I'm going to get this big mansion. I'm going to get this awesome car. I'm going to have the newest suits flown in from Italy and I'm going to have sushi flown in from Japan. Oh yeah, I'm going to be like making so much money. It'll be great. So then you say to your friend, hey, don't count your chickens before they have hatched, right? So the meaning of that is, don't imagine that you're going to be successful before you've put in some hard work, before you've actually done something, right? So that is a very commonly used one here, especially when somebody has really big dreams, but they have done nothing in order to achieve that dream, right? So don't count your chickens before they have hatched. And if you think about the literal meaning here, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because chickens come from an egg. And when they're coming out of the egg, we say hatch, right? A chick comes out. When the egg hatches, the chick comes out. So don't count your chickens before they've hatched means like, okay, you've got some eggs, but you don't know how many of them are going to survive. You don't know, just because you got 10 eggs doesn't mean you're going to have 10 chickens necessarily. Who knows if those eggs will survive? Who knows if they will actually hatch, right? So don't count your chickens before they've hatched. Don't imagine that you're going to be really successful unless you put in some hard work. Okay, so that's a good one too, guys. Don't count your chickens before they've hatched. Okay, guys, but let's move on. We've got quite a few about eggs here, but I think we're going to flip on over to the other side. Okay, another one I really, really like here, and is very, very simple, is hit the sack, hit the sheets, or hit the hay. Personally, I often use hit the sack or hit the hay. I use both. Now, the meaning of this is very simple. Just means go to bed. But it is very, very, very commonly used because a sack is basically like some kind of container, usually made out of fabric. Maybe you put potatoes in a sack, right? And I think a long time ago, people used to sleep maybe in a sack, right? So that's what it means, to hit the sack or hit the hay. Just means go to bed. Now, related to this, sometimes we also say, now hit in this case kind of means go, right? There's another one we sometimes use. We say hit the bathroom, right? And of course that just means go to the bathroom. So you're like, hey guys, I'm gonna hit the bathroom and then I'm gonna hit the hay, right? I'm gonna go to the bathroom, then I'm gonna go to bed, right? So I don't think I really have to explain much more about this. It's pretty simple. Just remember that sometimes you can use hit instead of go to, right? Like you're like, I'm gonna hit London Drugs, right? So of course that doesn't mean you're gonna go up to the store, London Drugs, and like, you know, like bam, aha, London Drugs, right? No, it means you're just gonna go to London Drugs, right? So, later this evening I'm gonna hit London Drugs, then I'm gonna hit that restaurant, then I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna hit the bathroom, and then I'm gonna hit the hay. So I'm gonna go here, go there, go to the bathroom, and go to sleep, right? Okay guys, so that's our first 5, but I wanna look at 5 more. So I'm just gonna erase this stuff here. I hope you guys were able to catch all of that. And let's continue onwards. So moving on, looking at some other good expressions here. All right, the next expression I want to look at here is, I really like this one. It's a dancing related idiom. It says, it takes two to tango, right? It takes two to tango. It takes two to tango. Okay, now you guys might know tango is a form of dance. Tango. I'm really wondering, I'm trying to think, maybe tango is a Brazilian dance. Could be wrong, but anyhow, I think it is South American. Again, could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. But the meaning of it takes two to tango, is actions or communications need more than one person, right? So this also means, and usually when I use it, it takes two to tango means it takes more than one person to create a problem, right? So for example, when two people are having an argument, maybe in a relationship, a boyfriend and girlfriend, and the girlfriend is blaming the boyfriend. It's your fault that blah, 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 right? I'm blaming you. You're the one that did all of this, right? But the guy says, hey, 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 it takes two to tango. And what he would be saying here is that it takes more than one person to cause a problem, right? If there's a problem between us, it's not just because of me, it might also be because of you, because it takes two to tango. You know, you don't dance the tango alone, right? That would look weird. You need a partner, right? Now, the other way you could use this is, like, let's say you want to go play badminton or tennis, right? And you're like, hey, I'm going to go play badminton, right? And your roommate's like, you're going to play badminton alone? And you're like, no, with my friend, because it takes two to tango. Or, of course, it takes two people to play badminton. However, like I said before, and this expression here is just used in its own separate sentence. This is usually used when you believe that you are not the only person at fault. You don't deserve all the blame. Somebody's blaming you. They're getting angry at you. But you believe it's also their fault as well. You say, hey, 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 it takes two to tango. It's not just my fault. It's also your fault as well. Okay, so it takes two to tango. Another good one here is, kill two birds with one stone. This is a really, really old idiom, but still commonly used, right? Now, if you think of the literal meaning here, to kill two birds with one stone. That means you see two birds, you pick up one stone, and you throw it, and bang, bang. That stone kills both of the birds, right? So the meaning of this is, with one action, you can accomplish two different things at the same time. So usually we use that when we're comparing an action where there will be two positive results to this expression, right? So let's see here. What would be an example, good example of that? Maybe I say, as an example, I'm going to eat more kale. I'm going to eat more kale because not only will that help me to lose weight, but it will also boost my immune system. Okay, wow, that's actually a really long example. But yeah, I'm going to eat more kale. You guys probably know kale, that vegetable. Everybody says, oh, it's extremely nutritious. It includes a lot of vitamins, you know, blah, 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 but it tastes terrible. But anyhow, I'm going to eat more kale because not only will that help me to lose weight, yeah, I'll lose weight, but it will also boost, and if something boosts you, it increases my immune system. So my immune system will be stronger so I can fight off diseases, right? Now, so here, this one action, eating more kale, accomplishes two things. Helps the person to lose weight, and it also helps them to boost their immune system. So we could say after this, it is like killing two birds with one stone. And there we go, right? So usually, like I said before, we use this expression after we have explained how some action accomplishes two different things, right? So maybe you think, oh, recently I've just been staying at home and eating junk food, so I'm getting unhealthy, I'm getting fat, right? So you think, okay, I'm gonna start working out, right? And by working out, I'm going to lose weight and look better. It's like killing two birds with one stone, right? You're accomplishing two things. All right, guys, so really, really good expression in number 7. Let's take a look at another one, though, in number 8. Okay, I really like let the cat out of the bag. To let the cat out of the bag. And usually this is used in its own separate sentence. We would say to somebody, you let the cat out of the bag. Now, try to create a mental image of this, right? You have a bag. In the bag, there is a cat. To let the cat out of the bag means you open the bag and the cat got out, right? And then the cat's running around like crazy, causing trouble. Now, in this case, the meaning of the cat basically is secret, right? So to let the cat out of the bag is to reveal a secret to lots of people, right? Or to somebody. So that's what it says here. It says to share information that was previously concealed. And that explanation is a little tough, right? But basically means to reveal a secret that you were not supposed to, right? So maybe your friend comes up, right? Your friend, you've been friends with this person for a long time, right? And they're like, hey, Dave, I want to tell you something important. You're like, well, what is it, John? And they're like, Dave, actually, I'm gay, right? And they're like, oh, okay, Dave, actually, I knew that for a long time, but whatever, thanks for telling me, right? And then your friend Dave is like, hey, but don't tell anyone. You're like, hey, don't worry, my lips are sealed. I won't tell anyone your secret, right? And you're like, okay, see you later, Dave. I'm like, oh, hey, Sarah, how's it going? Hey, did you know Dave is gay, right? Uh-oh, you let the cat out of the bag. You revealed the secret too easily, right? So sometimes when we think a friend, sibling, or somebody has told someone our secret, then we told them not to tell the secret, we might say to them, hey, did you let the cat out of the bag? Did you tell somebody the secret that I told you? And that's what that's all about. Okay, all right guys, but 2 more here. And the next one I want to take a look at is, okay, to be on the ball, right? So on the ball, but I think it's better to write out the full expression. To be on the ball. Or a better example here is he or she is on the ball. Now that sounds weird because if you imagine that, you're imagining somebody standing on a ball, right? And if they're standing on a ball, maybe they're gonna fall off, but that's not really the meaning. If somebody is on the ball, it basically means that they are a really, really good worker, right? They always pay attention to detail, they're very efficient, and they work very quickly, right? So I might say about one of my coworkers, I might say, May is always on the ball. Like, she always knows what's going on. She works really quickly and really efficiently. Ding, ding, ding. She's a good worker. Or maybe recently, my sister, for example, has been involved in a lot of projects. She's been working really hard. To say like, wow, Trish, you are really on the ball these days, right? You're doing a good job. So that's the one I want to take a look at. Pretty good one. So if somebody says you are on the ball, that's a good thing. All right, guys. And one last one here would be not speak of the devil. That's a really good one, though. I really like piece of cake, right? Now, piece of cake does not mean piece of cake, right? Unfortunately. But if you say something is a piece of cake, the meaning is very simple. It just means something is very easy to do, right? So usually we use the verb ing form, right? Think of something that's easy for you, right? What is easy for me? Okay, well, I don't know. This is a boring example, but making spaghetti, just because I did that last night. Making spaghetti is a piece of cake. So this is the action I'm talking about, and I'm saying it's a piece of cake. Basically, just keep in mind, it just means that this thing is very easy. There is nothing difficult about this, right? Making spaghetti is a piece of cake. It's simple, right? Anybody can do it. So you guys would have to think of your own examples at home, though. Maybe for you, you're really good at playing the piano, right? So you say, playing the piano is a piece of cake, right? Or maybe you're really good at hockey, right? Hockey is a piece of cake, or playing hockey is a piece of cake. Okay, but I want to stop it there. Those are the 10 idioms I wanted to take a look at. They're all quite good. The other idioms on the list here are also really good. So like I said before, if you have extra time, take a look at those idioms, because some of those idioms might be on tomorrow's test. Dun dun dun. We'll see what happens. Okay, but I'm going to erase this, guys, and what we should be looking at next here is describing jobs. So please turn over and take a look at describing jobs. And there's actually a lot of stuff to do here, and we don't have really enough time to go through everything, but we'll try our best. So take a look at jobs and people in number 1. And there are no exact answers here for the very first exercise. And it says, study the jobs and say which ones the people below would be suitable for using the expression, he or she would make a good blank, right? So what we're going to do is read over the first one, and then we got to think of an answer here, right? So we're taking a look at number 1. 1 second. Okay, Paul isn't very outgoing, but he has a very analytical mind, is good at solving problems. Okay, so he or she would make a good blank, blank, blank. Okay. Now, we have a list here of different jobs, right? Accountant, somebody that works with numbers. Company director, kind of like a CEO or a manager. Programmer, I think they're talking about computer programmer, somebody that programs computer software. An architect, someone who designs buildings. Electrician, somebody who sets up electrical wiring in a building. Sales representative. A sales representative, somebody who sells some kind of item. A bricklayer, bricklayer, that one you guys might not know very well. Bricklayer is somebody who lays down bricks, right? So they set up bricks to build a house. Kind of a traditional job, not really done anymore. A firefighter, somebody who saves people from burning houses, right? And puts out fires. Secretary, somebody who works for a boss. Maybe they organize their schedule, create programs, something like that. A builder, somebody who works in construction. A private detective, whoa, that's a really interesting job. private detective is not working for the police force, right? Maybe if you think your spouse is cheating on you, you hire a private detective to keep an eye on them and make sure they're not cheating on you. And lastly, a university lecturer, like a professor. Anyhow, we're going to take a look at number 1, guys. Paul isn't very outgoing, but he has a very analytical mind. He's good at solving problems. So he's analytical, right? He's good at analyzing things. He's a good problem solver, right? Maybe Paul is good at math, right? Now remember, there's not only just one answer here. We could pick multiple jobs, but he or she, or in this case it's Paul, Paul would make a good, what kind of job? Now, the first thing that springs to my mind is accountant, right? Because Paul is a good problem solver and he is analytical. So I would say accountant would be good. But there are other possible jobs we could fill in the blank here with as well. I think also programmer, right? Programmers have to do a lot of problem solving and, oops, why did I put 2 G's? And they have to be analytical as well. Okay, all right, so I'd say that one. All right, let's take a look at number 2. Sarah is a very confident and outgoing person. She's not afraid of talking to strangers. Okay, Sarah, she's confident. She's not afraid to talk to strangers, right? She likes to talk. I think she would make a good sales representative, right? She'd probably be good at selling products. So, sales rep. Okay, you don't have to write down representative. We usually just say sales rep. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. Marcel doesn't have much of an education, but he's good with his hands. Okay, so Marcel, he doesn't have a very good education, but he's good with his hands. So let's think about jobs here that kind of require just physical strength. 2 of the jobs that pop into my mind are bricklayer and builder, right? So I would say he would make a good bricklayer, or he would make a good builder. Remember, there's more than one possibility. Okay. Number 4, Andy has very good observation skills and pays extreme attention to detail. He also has a love for adventure and is very brave. Okay, so Andy, he pays attention to detail and he's good at observing things, right? He also loves adventure and he's very brave. Ooh, this one's harder, right? I would say a good fit for this one would be observational skills. So he's good at watching things and he's adventurous and he's brave. Sounds like a good job for him would be private detective, right? Because if you're going to be a private detective, you have to observe people, right? And you have to be kind of adventurous and you have to be quite confident and brave. So I think he would make a good private detective. Now, I might also say here, probably also a good company director as well, right? Company director. Okay, so let's take a look at number 5. We got Catherine is fascinated with buildings. She's quite creative and good at mathematics. Okay, so I'd say she would make a good architect, right? That one's kind of easy because she's fascinated with buildings. Now, she's also good at mathematics. So what else here might be good for her? Probably also accountant, right? Because accountants need to be good with numbers. Okay, take a look at number 6. Mike doesn't have any qualifications, but he likes helping people and is not afraid of danger. Okay, so Mike is maybe a little bit similar to Marcel. He doesn't have a lot of good educational qualifications, but he's maybe physical, he's brave, and he likes helping people. I think he would make a good firefighter. Because firefighters, that requires a lot of courage and you have to be willing to help people. So firefighter sounds good. Actually, not firefighters, firefighter. Okay, number 7. Shelley is very good with numbers, but she's a bit shy and generally prefers to work alone. Okay. Oh, wow. This sounds like, ugh. No. She is good with numbers. I want to say again, this sounds bad, but I'm going to write accountant again. Oh no, that's popped up 3 different times, right? Accountant, but I think also shy. But good with numbers. No, I'm just going to say accountant. That's about it for me. Okay. And number 8, guys. Daniel is his own boss. He can't imagine working for anybody else. Okay. Well, I think he would make a good director. And let's see if there are some other possibilities I can think of. Sorry guys, my phone just went off. I don't know why. Google wants to... Oh, it is on silent mode. That's weird. What else would be good here? Maybe secretary, but yeah, no. Let's just stick with director. Okay, guys. All right. So that's number 1. Now, remember, you didn't have to put a lot of the answers here could include a lot of the different jobs here. So you don't have to imagine that everything I wrote down here is 100%, the correct answer, because you could include other things. It depends on how you view that job, right? But let's move on to number 2, because we got some good expressions here. And it says match the description to their opposites in number 2. So let's just go over this orally. In number 1 here, it says, it is very tedious. Tedious. Now, tedious is a good term. Tedious. If you describe something as being tedious, it means that it's kind of boring. Not kind of boring. It is boring, but it's also repetitive, right? So when I was younger, I used to work at McDonald's, and I'm sure maybe some of you guys out there also worked at McDonald's. And McDonald's can be a very tedious job, right? You put the hamburgers down, put some salt on them, cook them, put the thing back up, and take it out, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. It's very, 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 very tedious. So, what would be the opposite from A through I? What is the correct answer here? Is it a piece of cake? That's not a bad guess, but no. I would say C. It's exciting and interesting, right? Because exciting and interesting is kind of the opposite of boring. So number 1 should be C. And actually, what I'll do here is just write the answer down. So 1 is C. Number 2, it can be very stressful, right? Now, if something is stressful, it's causing you a lot of stress, right? And you're not having a good time. What is the opposite of stressful? Let's take a look. Perfect. D, right? Our answer should be D because it says is usually very relaxing, right? If something is relaxing, that's basically the opposite of something being stressful, right? Okay. Number 3, guys, we got it is well paid. Now, that's a good term. If a job is well paid, it means they pay you well. They pay you a lot of money or more than you expected, right? So what is the opposite of well paid? Pretty easy. B, because B here says it's badly paid, right? If it's badly paid, they pay you less than you expected and you're not making a lot of money, unfortunately. Okay, take a look at number 4. You work long hours. That doesn't sound good either. You work long hours. So take a look at the other side. Pretty easy. Our answer here is G. Because G says you can go home early. Obviously, that's the opposite. Okay. Take a look at number 5, guys. We've got it's very challenging. If something's very challenging, it's not easy. It's difficult, right? So what would be the opposite of challenging? Well, I think A here would be a good answer because A is using that expression we talked about before. It's a piece of cake, right? If it's a piece of cake, it's super easy. So it's not challenging at all. Okay, Number 6, it can be very hectic, right? Now, hectic is probably an adjective that you guys are maybe not aware of, right? If something is hectic, it's kind of chaotic, very busy and disorganized, right? So hectic, what would be the opposite of hectic? Oh, wait, what is the opposite here? Give me a second. It can be very hectic. Well, F would actually be a pretty good answer. Because F says there's usually nothing to do, right? So it sounds like you're not very busy. Okay, let's take a look. Number 7, you meet lots of people. Okay, so if in that job you meet a lot of people, you're very social, or you should be, right? So the opposite of 7 here is the very last one, I. Because I says you feel very isolated, right? Now if you're isolated, that means you're very far away from other people, or you're secluded. So that's why 7 is I. Okay, take a look at number 8. It can be dangerous. Ooh, sounds like a terrible job, right? So answer here also pretty obvious. It's E, because E says it's very safe, right? That job's very safe, but that other job is very dangerous. Yikes. And number 9, we've got you need very good qualifications, right? You need very good qualifications. You need good specs, right? You need to go to the right university, take the right course, get a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree, etc., etc. So you need very good qualifications. Definitely the answer here, by process of elimination, of course, is H. And H says you don't need a degree. Okay guys, so we got our answers for the second one here. Let's continue onwards with the third part here. And what we have to do here is actually read a text, and I believe it's about a zookeeper. And after that, it says, would you like to work as a zookeeper? Why or why not? Now put the expressions in bold in the correct categories below. Okay, I think what we're gonna do here, guys, is read over this here and use a couple of these expressions, and then I think we're gonna be done with this one today. And then in the next class, we'll be moving on to something completely different. So let's try to do this a little bit quickly because we're running out of time. But I'm gonna read over this really quickly. It says, I work as a zookeeper. I'm responsible for feeding and caring for animals in a zoo. It's also my job to clean the animals' cages, report health problems, and entertain visitors. For this job, you need special qualifications. For example, a degree in biology or zoology. Of course, you need to have a love for animals. Each species is different from the others and requires special attention and care. You also need to be good at keeping records because you have to collect a lot of data for each animal. And you must be outgoing because you need to conduct tours for visitors and answer questions. I find my job really interesting. I've always loved animals, so caring for animals feels more like a hobby than a job. But it can get a bit dirty and tedious sometimes. For example, when you have to clean the cages, and it can also be a little dangerous, especially when animals get sick. They can hurt you. But on the whole, I really enjoy my work. I can't imagine doing anything else. Okay, now, below the reading here, it just says, would you like to work as a zookeeper? Why or why not? Now, for myself, no, that's not my cup of tea. I think being a zookeeper is not a piece of cake. I like animals, but I like domesticated animals, like, you know, cats and dogs. I'm not a big fan of wild animals. I don't want to work around bears and tigers and lions. I think they're interesting, but I also think they're quite dangerous, and I consider myself to be very unlucky. So I think if I worked as a zookeeper, I would probably get killed, right? So for me, I'd have to say no. Now, what it says here, guys, below this, it says, now put the expressions in bold in the correct categories below. So if you take a look back at the reading text, there are a couple of expressions that have been put in bold, right? They're darker than the regular text here. And they've given us one answer. When somebody asks you, what do you do? You can respond by saying, I work as a something, right? I work as a teacher. I work as a firefighter. I work as an accountant. I work as a company director, right? So that's one thing you can say. Now, the next one here, the question says, what are your responsibilities? Okay, now when you respond to that kind of question, what are your responsibilities? You want to respond with this one here in bold. It says, I am responsible for, right? So you say, I am responsible for ... And when you answer that, you tell the person about your duties, tasks, your responsibilities, right? So thinking about myself as a teacher, right? I might say, I'm responsible for teaching students. So you want to use the ing form when you respond, right? I'm responsible for teaching students. Maybe I could also say creating material and etc., right? I have other responsibilities as well. Okay, now next question says, what skills or qualifications do you need? Okay, now this one here we can respond with a lot of different expressions that were used in the text. For example, we could say, for this job, you need. Okay, so think about maybe your job or a job that you would like to have. What do you need, right? For this job, you need something, right? So of course, to be a teacher, for this job, you need a bachelor's degree, or you need a degree, right? And you need a TESOL degree, right, or diploma. But you could also include other things here, right? For this job, you need to be sociable, right? Or for this job, you need to, you need to be good at explaining vocabulary, right? Okay, so that's how you would talk about qualifications. But there are some good expressions they also use here. Like after you explain that, and you want to add some more, you might also say, you also need to be good at something, right? You also need to be good at explaining vocabulary. You also need to be good at dealing with behavioral problems, especially if you're teaching young kids. And lastly, there's one more here. You must be. ... You must be. Now as a teacher, you must be as a teacher. You must be clean. Now, I don't just mean physically clean, but morally clean, right? Try to keep a clean mind. Okay, and the last question here is, what's your job like, right? Now again, think of some of the expressions used in bold in the text, right? And the first one is, I find my job. I find my job. Now, when you fill this out, you might say, I find my job something, some kind of adjective. So let's say for teaching, I find my job rewarding, right? Or I find my job enjoyable. Like I like my job, right? But there are other expressions we can use here from the text. It can get a bit. So that might be when you're explaining the difficult parts of your job, right? But it can be a bit but it can be a bit, well, I would say hectic, right? Being a teacher sometimes is a little bit hectic. Maybe your material didn't print off, you got to rush over there, try to print off the material, or something went wrong with the printer, or something went wrong with the computer. It can be a bit hectic, right? And lastly, it can also be a little, so maybe you're adding another negative thing. It can also be a little, yeah, maybe for a teacher, a lot of teachers might say tedious, right? Sometimes it can be a little bit boring. You know, you have to go over grammar many, many times. Maybe you've done this so many times before and you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about the present continuous tense again. Oh God, this is painful, right? It can be a little bit tedious. Okay, but guys, we're gonna stop it right here for right now. And we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna jump into something completely different. We're gonna be talking about, I think, Maori people living, yes, culture, the Maori Kapahaka. I think that's Maori people from New Zealand and their dance. So we'll take a look at this, but we'll take a break first. So I'll see you again in a moment. Okay guys, welcome back to live PST. Oh, I forgot to erase this off the board. But what we're going to be getting into next, you'll need to take a look at this one here. Culture, the Maori Kapahaka, right? So we're going to be talking about the Maori people. And I don't know if you guys know the Maori too well. I also don't know the Maori that well either. But a good family friend in my hometown, their uncle married a Maori woman and lived down in New Zealand. So that's where the Maori people from. They're from New Zealand. So anyhow, of course, we got some quick warm-up questions, and that's our first question. Who are the Maori people, right? Now, again, I don't know that much about the Maori people, but they're similar to, in Canada, the First Nations people, right? Now, you guys might not know that term, so let me write that down. First Nations people. So in Canada, a long time ago, we used to call the First Nations people Indians, right? But that was kind of confusing because there are Indian people are from India, right? But we called native North American people as Indians. So there's a lot of different terms we could use here. First Nations people, Indians, but this term is really, really old. We shouldn't use this term anymore. We can call them Indians or native people because they are native to this area. They've lived here for a long time. Or we can say indigenous. Because if you use this adjective, indigenous, it means from a certain area, right? So anyhow, First Nations people, basically that means the indigenous or native people of Canada. And Maori people are the indigenous or native people of New Zealand. And that's what I know about the Maori. But I also know the Maori are famous for a kind of dance. And I also know that they're very good at rugby. And that's why New Zealand has the best rugby team in the entire world. Anyhow, so that's what I know about the Maori people. Number 2, did you learn any traditional dances, songs, or chants in school? So how about you guys? Did you guys learn any traditional dances? Some certain songs or some certain dances, I repeated myself, chants in school, right? Now a chant might be something that doesn't always include singing, but like maybe humming, like now in my case, growing up here in Canada, did I learn any specific chants, songs, or dances? Not so much, of course. When I was in elementary school, I think almost every day we sang "O Canada," or at least once a week. Besides that, not so much in school. However, when I was in junior high school, we had to learn how to square dance, right? And square dance is a kind of country dance, country song dance. Not very fun, but I expect that you guys, or I suspect that you guys in Brazil, you guys probably do some certain dances, maybe the flamingo, tango, something like that. And maybe in Korea, you guys learn how to do a traditional dance. I don't know the name. And you guys also probably sometimes sing your national anthem. And your national anthem is, oh man, it's not Erilang, right? But I'm sure you guys know Erilang, it's a good song. In Japan, I'm sure you guys maybe learn some kind of song for your school, but I'm not sure. So for me, not too much though. Number 3, are there different traditional cultures in your country? Are there different traditional cultures in your country? Now, of course, if we're talking about Canada, yes, there are many, many different traditional cultures in Canada. I think if we think about the First Nations people of Canada, in British Columbia alone, in this one province, there are 6 major different First Nations groups, right? But across Canada, I think the number is 31. There are 31 different First Nations groups. So there are a lot of different traditional people living in Canada and lots of different traditional cultures, right? But also a lot of people know that in Canada, we have two official languages, English and French. So French is not very widely spoken in most of Canada, but if you go to one particular province, and that province being Quebec, and you go to Montreal, and you go to Trois-Rivières, and you go to other cities in Quebec, it's expected that you should speak French, right? So in Canada, we have two major, well, I'd say three major cultures: English-speaking Canada, French-speaking Canada, and also the First Nations people, but they're also divided into so many groups. The First Nations people here in Vancouver are definitely not the same as the First Nations people who live in Saskatchewan or Manitoba or Ontario, right? And there's so many different groups in Ontario and Manitoba. Anyhow, guys, that's about it for me. Maybe if you guys think about your home country in Brazil, Japan, or Korea, I'm sure there are many different traditional cultures. I think in Japan, you've got Jomon, Yayoi, maybe those are two traditional different cultures, but also the Ainu people, Ainu, I'm not sure how to pronounce it correctly. Brazil, you are a very multicultural society or multiracial society, and that's something we share with you in Canada. You have the Afro-Brazilian community, you have the Portuguese community, Italians, Germans, Japanese, etc. It's very mixed, so that's interesting. And Korea, I'm sure going back a long way. Well, I know a long time ago you guys had Sheila, Pekje, and Goguryeo. I don't know how to pronounce it, but maybe they're kind of traditional cultures, right? Now, before we get into this any further though, we have to look at some key vocabulary. So let's go through this a little bit quickly together. First one we got is the Maori, the indigenous people of New Zealand. Moving on, we have fascinating. Now, fascinating, really good adjective, right? If we say something is fascinating, it means it's really, really interesting, right? So maybe you guys have watched the movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio. When I watched that movie, I was so interested in it, right? I thought, wow, this is fascinating. And not only is it fascinating, but it's the most fascinating movie I've ever seen, right? I was just like, wow, this movie, it's blowing my mind. It's fascinating. Okay, after that, guys, so fascinating just means very interesting. We've got tradition, right? Now, a tradition can be similar to that word I talked about on Tuesday, like a custom, right? A custom is like certain cultural act, right? A certain way of behaving. So, for example, in Canada, it's a tradition to open the door for people who are behind you, right? That's something we should do, right? Or in my family, it was a tradition for us to wait until my father started eating until we could start eating, right? That was just one of our family traditions. So we can say a family tradition, we could say a cultural tradition, right? So a cultural tradition maybe in your country, I don't know, in Japan, I think there's a cultural tradition when you turn 20 years old, you're recognized as an adult and you need to dress up in a kimono or something, and there's some kind of ceremony, right? And that is an example of a tradition. Now, moving on, we've got the word war. Pretty sure this is an easy one for you guys. A war is when two countries or two groups of people are fighting with each other, right? So the best examples of that are World War I or World War II or the Korean War or what would be a more recent one? The war in Iraq, right? The Iraq War or the war in Afghanistan. Anyhow, so that is war when people are fighting. After that, we have chanting. Now, a chant or to chant and chanting, it's similar to singing, right? You are saying certain words, right? In a certain pattern, right? Now, a lot of times people might chant when they go to a kind of sports game, right? I'm trying to think of a good chant. So usually in Vancouver, if you go and watch the Vancouver Canucks, the hockey team for Vancouver, a common chant they'll sing is, we will beat you, bum bum ch. We will beat you. You know, blah blah blah. It comes from a song, but actually that is a chant. Anyhow, moving on, guys, we've got expert. If you are an expert, that means you have a lot of knowledge about a certain subject, right? If I say, for example, I am a Canadian history expert, it means I know a lot about Canadian history. You can ask me any question about Canadian history and I will know the answer, right? Or my good friend John, he's basically a baking expert, right? He can bake anything you can think of. Blueberry muffins, tiramisu cake, brownies, Nanaimo bars, etc. He is a baking expert, right? So an expert just has a lot of knowledge about a certain subject. Next thing we got is just an action, to slap your thighs. So your thighs, that's the inner part of your upper leg, right? And slap, you know, well, slap usually means we imagine this kind of action, you know, slap in the face, you know, you shouldn't have cheated on me, smack, right? Smack or slap. Anyhow, but this action here, slap your thighs, would be that action, right? Bam, right? Okay, and then we have stomp your feet, right? Now stomp your feet, this is another action involving, of course, your feet. Stomp your feet, right? That is stomp your feet, right? When I was growing up, my family, we had sheep, right? You know, bang, sheep. And sometimes they would stomp their feet when they were angry. After that, we have shout, right? The verb shout. Of course, shout is similar to yell, scream, things like that, right? But shout could be like, hey, how you doing? Right? I am shouting. I'm doing okay. And there we go. Okay, after that we have tribe and the plural form tribes. Now, a tribe basically describes a kind of smaller number of people in a group, right? So sometimes there's a culture and they're divided into different tribes. So if I think about the First Nations people in Canada, there are many different types of First Nations people, and there are so many different tribes. So near my hometown, the tribe there, they were called Kitsum-Kalem. But just about 40 kilometers away, there was another tribe called the Haisla. So, and there's also the Gitsan, and there's also, well, there's so many. Anyhow, so tribe is a way to describe how a group of people is organized into a smaller number of people, right? We don't usually use the term tribe to describe modern people living in a developed country. It's usually used to describe indigenous people or First Nations people who are split into different smaller groups. After that, guys, we've got to suffer. Okay, so when you pronounce this, don't mistake suffer with supper, right? Supper is delicious, that's dinner. Suffer is terrible, right? So to suffer means to feel pain, right? If you say, I am suffering, it's like you are feeling pain, right? Like, oh my God, I didn't eat dinner for like 5 days, I didn't have supper, so I'm suffering, right? I'm in pain, right? So, of course, right now there's the coronavirus and some people have been infected and some people are unfortunately suffering, right? But hopefully that will end soon. Actually, right after that we have the word fortunately, which I think you guys are probably familiar with because we often use the term unfortunately when we are telling somebody bad news, right? So these days, I'm doing okay. Unfortunately, I'm very bored though, right? If we use fortunately, we're gonna bring up something good. If we use unfortunately, we're gonna bring up something bad, right? So usually the way you use this is you say something good, then you say unfortunately, and then you say something bad. With fortunately, you say something bad, and then you say fortunately, and then you say something good, right? So I might say, you know, to my coworker, like, John, you need to make this report by tomorrow. Fortunately, it should be pretty easy to make, right? So the bad news is he's got to do it for tomorrow. Fortunately, it's pretty easy though, right? So that's a way you could use fortunately. Now, we also have here the word rugby, and I talked about rugby before. Rugby is a sport, right? You guys might already be familiar with rugby. I think the Rugby World Cup was recently, or relatively recently, hosted in Japan last year. Could be wrong about that. I think the Japanese rugby team is actually quite good. They did very, very well. But the Maori people in New Zealand, they're really well known for kind of being like the best at rugby, right? And you guys know rugby is kind of a sport that's similar to American football, right? Except in American football, they're wearing a lot of protective equipment, right? They got the helmet, shoulder pads, body armor, etc., right? In rugby, they're not wearing a lot of protective equipment. It's a pretty violent sport. Actually, my elementary school gym teacher used to play rugby, and I remember one day, I think grade 3, grade 4, going to gym class, and I looked at my teacher's ear, and he had stitches, and then he could tell all of us were looking at his ear. So he told us he was playing rugby the night before, and he fell on the ground, and somebody stepped on his ear with like soccer cleats and ripped his ear off, and then he had to have it stitched back on. Sorry for telling you a very terrible story. Anyhow, moving on, next term we have is respect, right? Now, respect, such a great verb. If we respect somebody, we view them at least at being the same level with us or being at a higher level, and we treat them well because we respect them. And respect and admire can kind of have a similar meaning, right? If we admire somebody, we look up to them, we think like, wow, I want to be like this person. Respect is similar, maybe not as strong as admire, because when you admire someone, you really, really look up to them. But if you respect them, you do treat them well, right? You think they're at least equal to you, right? And the opposite of respect is very simple. You just add D-I-S to disrespect. If you disrespect somebody, you do not treat them well, right? Like sometimes you might go to a restaurant and you might see somebody like, waiter, where are you? Oh, you're so slow. And I would think like, wow, that guy is disrespecting the server. He is very disrespectful. So again, actually you could easily modify respect from its verb form and convert it into its adjective form, which is respectful. Full of respect, right? Respectful. So I know in many countries like Japan and Korea in particular, but also Canada, we should respect elderly people, or we should be respectful of elderly people. I'm guessing that's also in Brazil. I respect nurses and doctors, and I think everybody right now is very respectful of nurses and doctors, right? Anyhow, guys, last term we have here is check out. To check out. Couple of different meanings here, right? Check out. Now, the formal meaning of check out is basically to leave a hotel or motel. You know, you go up, like you've stayed in there for one night, you go down to the front desk and, you know, the next day, and you say, I would like to check out, please, right? You pay your bill and boom, you leave, right? So that's one meaning to check out. But check out has a much more commonly used secondary meaning, and to check out can mean to take a look at somebody or something, right? So maybe I invented this new water, right? Check it out, right? Take a look at it. Whoa, this water is super awesome. Actually, I need some water. Oh yeah, super awesome. Okay. Anyhow, guys, so yeah, check it out. Okay, but let's finally move on. We have, the comprehension questions, but we haven't listened yet. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. we're gonna listen. I don't have any answers here, so I also need to take some notes, so I'm gonna be taking notes as well. This is about 2 minutes long. Of course, we're gonna play it 2 or 3 times, then we will take a look at these comprehension questions. So let's try this out.
The Maori are the native peoples of New Zealand. Their long and fascinating history has a lot of tradition, war, and culture. One of the most important traditions of the Maori is the Kapahaka. Kapa means form in a line, and Haka means dance. It is a combination of emotional singing, dancing, and chanting. Here is what an expert says about the Haka.
The Haka is a specific war dance. You have to make your body look big and scary, slap your thighs and stomp your feet, and of course you have to shout. It is performed at schools and during important events such as weddings and other ceremonies. The Maori tribes that performed the Haka have suffered a lot. Throughout history, they almost lost their culture. Fortunately, they survived and kept the Haka. The Haka is also performed before every All Blacks rugby match. To respect the tradition and history, the athletes on the team perform this war chant. They have done the Haka for more than 100 years.
Children in New Zealand learn the Haka when they are young so that they can perform it at important events in the future. If you ever go to New Zealand, make sure to check out the Kapahaka.
Alright guys, so for me, obviously it's not too hard for me to answer these questions, but I'm sure for you guys we're going to need to listen at least one more time. But why don't we take a look at the comprehension questions first to see what you're really going to be looking for while you're listening. I probably should have done this before, but number 1, you really want to think, what does Kapahaka mean, right? What is the meaning of Kapahaka? Okay. Number 2, what are 3 things you have to do to perform the Haka, right? If you want to do that thing, whatever the Haka is, because it's an answer for number 1, what are 3 things you need to do? So listen for that. Number 3, what did Maori tribes almost lose? So they do talk about the Maori tribes almost losing something, right? And actually that one's really hard to catch because they mention it quite briefly. Okay, number 4, Haka is performed before every what? When do they perform the Haka? Before every something. And lastly, number 5, they have performed the Haka for how long, right? We got more than 100 years, less than 100 years, 100 years, and lastly, 100 times. That doesn't really make sense. Anyhow, all right guys, so listen again and listen for that information. You really want to just try to answer these questions. Okay, so here we go again. No, there we go.
The Maori are the native peoples of New Zealand. Their long and fascinating history has a lot of tradition, war, and culture. One of the most important traditions of the Maori is the Kapahaka. Kapa means form in a line, and Haka means dance. It is a combination of emotional singing, dancing, and chanting. Here is what an expert says about the Haka.
The Haka is a specific war dance. You have to make your body look big and scary, slap your thighs and stomp your feet, and of course you have to shout. It is performed at schools and during important events such as weddings and other ceremonies. The Maori tribes that performed the Haka have suffered a lot. Throughout history, they almost lost their culture. Fortunately, they survived and kept the Haka. The Haka is also performed before every All Blacks rugby match. To respect the tradition and history, the athletes on the team perform this war chant. They have done the Haka for more than 100 years.
Children in New Zealand learn the Haka when they are young so that they can perform it at important events in the future. If you ever go to New Zealand, make sure to check out the Kapahaka.
Alright guys, so we listened to it a second time. I don't think you guys need to listen to it a third time. And I really think that probably before you listen to this, many of you know just a little bit about the Maori people and about that famous dance that they do, right? So let's take a look at our comprehension questions. I already kind of gave you guys the answer to number 1 though. So number 1 was, what does Kapahaka mean? Basically, like the narrator said there, it means to form a line and then to do a dance, right? So the Maori people and New Zealanders, or Kiwis as we call them in Canada and America, they're famous for the Kapahaka, right? Especially when there's a sporting event. But anyhow, basically our answer is to form a line and dance and do the Kapahaka, right? It's kind of a fun sounding word as well. Now number 2, this one is probably a lot harder to answer because you're looking for 3 different things here. It says, what are 3 things you have to do to perform the Haka? So in order to perform that dance, there are 3 things. Well, the first one here is pretty easy. It says make your body big. So you gotta make their body big, right? Then they need to slap something. And this was mentioned in the keyword section. They need to slap their thighs. So that's make your body big, slap your thighs. And what is the third one? What was the third thing that was mentioned? And this is also in the key vocab. They need to stomp their feet, right? But in this case, stomp your feet. So you need to make your body big, slap your thighs, and stomp your feet, right? That's why it's such an interesting dance, right? Because they're like going like this, and they're stomping their feet and slapping their thighs, and they're also chanting. So it's kind of a very intimidating dance, but it's very interesting. Okay, moving on to number 3, guys. We've got, what did Maori tribes almost lose? Now, like I said before, this one pretty hard to catch because it's mentioned quite briefly, right? And when the narrator kind of passes it over to the Maori expert or the Maori history expert, she's talking about the history, very briefly, of the Maori people. And she says that they suffered for quite a long time and they've had kind of a rough time in history, right? So they almost lost something. So we want to answer this, we'll say, they almost lost their what? And it starts with a C. Now, this has probably happened to many different types of people all over the world. There are many different types of people, maybe tribes or smaller groups, that have almost lost their what? Their culture. Right? Now, if we think of groups around the world that have lost their culture, right? I'm sure for Japanese students, if you think of the indigenous people of northern Japan, the Ainu people, I'm pretty sure a lot of them have kind of lost their culture, right? They're just a regular Japanese person now. Maybe they don't practice any traditional Ainu traditions, right? Or if we think in Canada's case, like I said before, there are many different First Nations groups. But a lot of First Nations groups, especially out east in Canada, in Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, or PEI, Quebec, etc., many of them do have kept their own traditional culture, but some of them have lost their culture. And there's even some groups close to my hometown, the First Nations tribes there, the Kitsim-Kalim. A lot of the elderly people can still speak their First Nations language, but a lot of the younger people, they can't speak the language, so their language is dying, and in a certain way, if the language dies, the culture can die as well, all right? So it's very unfortunate. I'm sure for Brazilian students out there, because you're kind of similar to us, right? Like a lot of your ancestors in Brazil came from Europe, just like in Canada, a lot of our ancestors also came from Europe, at least in the beginning. Maybe some of your indigenous groups or First Nations people in Brazil have also lost their culture, and that's kind of sad. Anyhow, now the important thing here is that they almost lost their culture. So almost lost it, but they didn't, right? And they're keeping the Kapahaka alive, and so they're keeping that part of their culture alive. But anyhow, number 4, Haka is performed every what? When do they perform the Haka or the Kapahaka? This was also a little bit hard to catch. Now my hint here is at a sporting event, and a sporting event that New Zealanders or Kiwis are really, really good at. They're basically the best in the world at this kind of sport. So I'm gonna write, it is performed at every something. And basically it's performed at every, actually I shouldn't say at every, it's true, it is at every, but to be more specific, it's before every, and that looks messy, I'm gonna erase that. Before every something something rugby match. Now it would be really hard for you guys to have caught the 2 blanks here, but I think you guys probably caught rugby match or rugby game, right? Now, do you guys know the name of that famous team from New Zealand, right? They're actually called the All Blacks. I don't know where that name comes from, but this group of rugby players, they're basically the best in the world. I don't think every year they win, but pretty much every year. So they are the All Blacks rugby match, or All Blacks rugby team. And before they play a game, they will always do the Haka, right? And it's pretty interesting. Anyhow, last one, guys, number 5. This one, pretty easy because it's multiple choice. They have performed the Haka for, is it A, more than 100 years, B, 100 years, C, less than 100 years, or D, 100 times. Well, D is totally wrong, just 100 times. No, because they performed this also in school, so I'm sure it's been performed more than 100 times. The answer we're looking for there is A, more than 100 times, because if you guys, I'm not sure if you guys have access to the transcript, but if you look at the transcript, it says, yeah, near the end here, they have done the Haka for more than 100 years, all right? Okay, now, let's discuss this a little bit, right? We've got our comprehension questions done, but we have some discussion questions here. And actually they give us a link here. It says, watch the video of the original Maori Haka dance. Now actually there's a mistake here. It should say, how do you feel after watching it? Okay, so it would be good if you guys got some time, go find that video. The link is there, www.youtube.com/watch, and then all this weird stuff. So you guys will have to type that in at home. And maybe just take a quick look at it. So I'll just kind of continue talking for a little bit while you find that video and hopefully watch it. You don't need to watch the whole thing, just a little bit. Now, I watched this before, right? And it asked me, how do you feel after watching it? That's a good question. How do I feel after watching the Haka? Well, to be honest, and to use some vocabulary from the keywords section here, I think the dance is quite fascinating. I think it's quite interesting. I would also call the dance powerful. To me, this dance seems like a warrior's dance, right? And you might be wondering, what does that mean? What is a warrior, right? So give me a second here. I'll just erase these answers that I hope you guys got before. Okay, all right, that looks all right. So like I said, when I watched that video, I feel like it's a very fascinating dance. I feel like it's kind of powerful. Maybe I could also describe it as intimidating, but I also feel like it's a warrior's dance, right? So that word, warrior, right? Warrior is a noun, right? And a warrior describes somebody who, well, it's not an adjective, but a warrior is somebody who is basically like a fighter, right? Like a soldier. So I think the Maori people in the past, they had like a warrior culture. They're really, really tough people, right? And that's why that dance seems like a warrior dance, basically. Now I also said that the dance is kind of intimidating, right? Now, to intimidate is the verb, and if you take the E off and add ing, that becomes the adjective form of intimidate, intimidating. So if something is intimidating, or if somebody intimidates you, that can kind of have a similar meaning to threaten or threatening. To threaten or threatening. Okay, so what is the meaning of that, right? Now, to threaten somebody is to verbally, orally, or physically kind of scare them in order to try to get something, right? Like if I threaten my coworker, I'm like, hey, I don't want to do this report. You do the report or I'm gonna get you fired, right? I would be threatening them, right? And that's not a good thing to do. But if somebody threatens you, maybe you're outside and a person comes up to you and like, hey, give me some money. And you're like, no. They're like, give me money or I'm gonna hurt you, right? Again, that would be to threaten somebody. But intimidate is not supposed to be as strong as threaten, but if somebody intimidates you, it makes you feel kind of scared of them, right? And I think if you are playing rugby against the All Blacks rugby team and they do the Kapahaka, Kapahaka, woo, getting it mixed up, right? You might feel intimidated because you're like, whoa, this is like a warrior's dance. Oh my God, I'm so scared. But also, they're the best team, right? So you might feel intimidated. Anyhow, good vocabulary. Now, how do I feel after watching it? Well, that's about it. Yeah, I might feel like this is very fascinating, it's powerful, it's a warrior's dance, but it's also a little bit intimidating, right? However, like I said before, my hometown is close to a First Nations group called the Kitsim-Kalim. They also have aspects of their culture that include a lot of like warrior type stuff, and they could also be pretty intimidating, and they also had some warrior dances that were somewhat similar but not the same. But anyhow, all right guys, number 2 here, this question is a little bit confusing for me, but it says, look at the underlined section in the dialogue. What is something in your country that you recommend people checking out? Okay, well, I don't want to specifically talk about that in reference to the video link that you can find through YouTube, but at the very, very end of the dialogue that we listened to before, they said, if you ever go to New Zealand, make sure to check out a Kapahaka. Now, I explained check out before, right? The formal meaning to check out is to pay your bill in a hotel and to leave. But another meaning to check out is to take a look at, right? Hey, check out that car. Check out that new restaurant. Check out that dog. That dog looks really cool, right? But here they're asking, what is something in your country that you recommend people check out? Okay, so think if you're in Japan or Korea, Brazil, Vietnam, Mongolia, etc., Czech Republic, whatever, what is something that tourists should check out in your country? Now, for me, that's a tough one. In Canada, if you're gonna come to Canada as a tourist, what do I recommend that you check out? Well, I definitely recommend that you check out Montreal because it's very different from English-speaking Canada. And they have the best food, best cheese, best wine in Canada, so you should check out Montreal. I also recommend checking out Vancouver and Whistler. If you like skiing, if you like snowboarding, you should definitely check out Whistler because they have the best skiing in the world. I'm pretty sure anyhow. Much better than Switzerland, much better. That might not be true, but anyhow. But also, if you're in British Columbia, one of the foods you have to check out is smoked salmon, right? You have to check out smoked salmon. So get some smoked salmon, get some cream cheese, get a bagel or some kind of dense bread. Put the cream cheese on the bagel or the bread, put some smoked salmon on it, and you will be in smoked salmon heaven. You have to check it out, right? Other than that, guys, in Canada, of course, you should check out Niagara Falls if you have a chance. Definitely check it out. It's really nice. It's a beautiful, natural place to go to. Of course, Canadians in Canada, we're famous for not rugby, but we're famous for a different sport, and that is hockey. So if you have a chance, you have to check out a hockey game. The energy in a hockey stadium is really, really high. People get really excited, so you have to check out a hockey game. Besides that, in Canada though, I'm not too sure. There's many other things, of course, but I am fairly well-traveled. Not well-traveled, but I've traveled a bit. And places that I would recommend checking out, like I said before, you have to check out Prague in the Czech Republic. Such a great place because you gotta check out their beer. It's awesome, and you gotta check out a lot of the historical monuments they have in Prague are really fantastic, like the Bone Cathedral, which is actually outside of Prague, but it's a cathedral or church made out of human bones, which is kind of scary, but also very interesting. If you ever go to France, of course, you have to check out the Louvre and also Versailles. They're both really awesome. If you really like art, of course, the Louvre is excellent, but also Versailles is such a rich, expensive place. Everything's in gold and there's fantastic pieces of art. If you ever go to Italy, definitely check out, Rome is cool. Of course, there's a lot of Roman architecture and also traditional ruins that you can check out, but I highly recommend checking out Florence because Florence is extremely beautiful with nice people, good food, and also a lot of great history. So check it out. Okay guys, but I can't really use the term check it out anymore. I almost feel kind of tired of using it multiple times. But yeah, that's our last discussion question. So if you guys take a look back at the key vocab here, and I take a look here, you can see how a lot of the vocabulary was used in context. So I really recommend reading over the transcript later, thinking about how the vocabulary here was used. But if we look back at the vocabulary, I just want to tell you guys which words I think are really useful. So I think that adjective fascinating, really excellent. I do use this, if something is really interesting, you can always describe it as being fascinating, right? Wow, that's fascinating, right? Or let's say you're talking with someone in Canada or America and they're talking about something really interesting. If you want to compliment them, right? You want to compliment their knowledge or something, you say, wow, what you're talking about is fascinating, right? Or that's fascinating, you're a fascinating person. That might be too much if you say they're a fascinating person, but if you say to them, wow, that's fascinating, it's a good compliment, right? They'll be like, oh, thank you, yeah. So there's fascinating, that's excellent. Tradition is a good word as well. But also the adjective form of tradition is very, very useful. Traditional. Traditional. Right? Now, traditional can kind of have a similar meaning to old-fashioned, but don't get that confused with the donuts, old-fashioned donuts. Okay, bad joke, but anyhow. Old-fashioned or conservative. And these are all adjectives. Well, he is a conservative, that can also be a noun. But like kind of old way of thinking, right? If I said, for example, my father is very traditional, or my father is very conservative, that would mean like a lot of his ideas or the way he sees the world is kind of like people would think of in the past, right? Like if somebody says in Canada, my dad is traditional, maybe it means that they don't accept gay marriage, right? Or gay people as much, right? Which is very rare in Canada, though. Most people are not that conservative. But I'm pretty sure in Brazil, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, wherever you are, that there are certain people that are conservative and kind of have an older view of things. So the opposite of conservative, though, pretty useful term. We can say progressive, or we can also say liberal. So when I was younger, and still now, I would refer to myself as a liberal, although I feel like in Canadian politics now, liberals are almost a little bit too progressive. So I am a classical liberal, anyhow. So for the rest of the vocab here, chant, not too useful. War, well, you guys already know war. Expert, always a good word. If you're an expert, you're very knowledgeable about something. Shout, of course, very useful verb. You know, bleh. Tribe, not so much, not such a useful term. To suffer, very useful, to feel a lot of pain. Fortunately, pretty useful, although I use the opposite more often. I use unfortunately quite often. Rugby is just a sport. Respect, very, very useful term. We should respect doctors, we should respect teachers, we should respect, yada yada, whoever. We should respect everybody. Not everybody. Definitely not my neighbor, right? Not Brian. But last one here, check out. Very useful phrasal verb, right? Oh, check out that car, check out that restaurant, check that place out, right? But I think I'm gonna end it about there, guys. Tomorrow, you guys are gonna be with Melanie, of course. Melanie is gonna be doing a little bit of review for you guys, and you guys will also be taking a quiz after tomorrow, of course. But I know that you guys also have homework, some listening homework. I hope you guys get that done tonight, submitted for tomorrow's class. But I believe Melanie's plan with you guys is to do a little bit of review, something else, and then after you guys will take a quiz. So I hope you guys have, this is my last day for this week, so I hope you guys have a good weekend. Stay safe, of course, stay inside, unless I guess you're in Korea. I think everything's basically not too bad there, so you can still go about, right? But I will see you guys again sometime next week. All right, have a good one.